How's it going, guys, and welcome once again to the Foot and Fist Sports Network, and it is time, finally after so long waiting, it's time to talk about UFC 205, easily the biggest card in UFC history. Never has there been a card with so many great fights. I mean, this card is literally stacked from top to bottom. Unfortunately, Tim Kennedy versus Rashad Evans was forced to be pulled off the card due to Rashad Evans having an injury. It's a shame. However, the show must go on, as they like to say. And what can I say? The card is great either way. I'm hoping Tim Kennedy will get another fight, or at least get paid what he was supposed to get paid, because that would be kind of fucky from the UFC. Fucky? Is that even a word? But either way, it would be shitty from the UFC to not pay him his money on fight week. When the guy pulls out on fight week. So yeah, let's go ahead and start off with the prelims. I'm going to be doing a video about the prelims. I'm going to be doing a video about the main card. So let's go ahead and start off with the prelims. We're going to be starting off with Liz Carmouche versus Caitlyn Chuang. Now, this is an interesting fight because I don't really know a whole lot about Chuang, but what I do know is that Liz Carmouche, with all due respect as always, nothing but respect to these fighters, she isn't exactly the best fighter around. You know, she's 9-5. She has had a pretty bad time in the UFC. I think she was almost undefeated when she came into the UFC. Now she's had quite a few losses, obviously at 9-5. Chuang is undefeated. She's 8-0, I think, and she's beaten Lauren Murphy, who is a somewhat of a named opponent. So she's beaten somebody who's at least got some skill. So right now I'm going to be expecting Chuang to win just because I don't have a lot of faith in Carmouche. I don't think she's up to the UFC level, even if the women's bantamweight division isn't that great to start with. So Chuang, I think she will get the decision win. Next up, we're going to talk about a great fight here. Now, the first one, like I said, isn't that great, but the second one is amazing. Now, Jim Miller versus Thiago Alves. Now, just about a year ago, these two guys were up there as some of the best fighters in their respective weight classes. Now, they're competing at lightweight, and I'm pretty excited to see what Jim Miller can do. Thiago Alves, he's sort of had some issues with weight cutting before. He's a very thick guy. So we'll see how he comes into this fight. But, a couple years ago, before he had those brutal injuries, I would have expected Thiago Alves to win this fight. However, I think that right now, as they've both aged, and I think that things have started to change a little bit for both men, but I think that Jim Miller, even though he did take a bad loss to Joe Lozon, I think that Jim Miller right now is probably going to be the one that's going to go out there and have the best game plan. Is going to go out there and get the win. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think it's going to be maybe even a split decision, but I do think it will go to a decision, and Jim Miller will walk away with the win. Now we're going to talk about a fighter that I don't particularly know, which is Vicente Luque taking on Belal Muhammad. Now, a lot of people have been talking about how Belal Muhammad is actually a pretty good fighter. He's an up-and-coming contender. Well, not contender, but he's an up-and-coming star, and there's a lot of potential in him. I haven't seen Vicente Luque fight as far as I know. There's a lot of times where I watch somebody fight, like in the prelims or something like that, and then because of the fact they don't have a lot of traction behind them, I forget their names. I don't have great memory, to be honest with you. So I don't really know what to expect from him, but I am going to go with Belal Muhammad just because I think that he has a lot of skill. He's got a lot of talent behind him, and I think that this is going to be one of those times where he showcases his skills on a very big card. I think that even if it's on the prelims, I think a lot of people will be watching this particular prelim card. It's in New York, and there's going to be a special feeling behind it. So I think Belal Muhammad will put on show in this fight and probably get a second or third round finish. Now we're going to talk about another great fight, which is Rafael Natal versus Tim Boetsch. Now these guys, we all know everything about them. They're veterans of the UFC. They've been fighting for so long, and they've both been pretty much top 15 fighters ever since they came into the UFC. What we do know is that Tim Boetsch, he's up and down. He's a very tough guy. He's not easy to finish. Rafael Natal, on the other hand, is a very good fighter. He's very well-rounded, and a lot of times he can surprise people. However, I think that this fight's going to be pretty straightforward for Natal. We all know that, like I said, the barbarian Tim Boetsch is very hard to finish unless you're at a top-level fighter, not the very top. I think that for somebody like Rafael Natal, who isn't necessarily a top 10 or a top 5 fighter, it's going to be a bit harder. So I think it's going to go to a decision or a late third-round stoppage. But Rafael Natal will get the big win in New York City. Now it's time to talk about a badass fucking fight. It's Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Michael Johnson. This is actually one of those fights that I don't really know who to score it with because Khabib Nurmagomedov, before his injuries, was an absolute monster. And even when he came back, he fought a sort of a no-name fighter, and he demolished him. All right, so nothing to say. There's definitely no doubt that Khabib is still a very, very badass fighter. But one thing I do question is, how is he going to be against a top guy like Michael Johnson? I have my doubts. Michael Johnson showed in his fight against Dustin Poirier, he is very dangerous. His hands are extremely fast. He might have the fastest hands in the division. Not necessarily the best hands, but definitely the fastest hands, I would say. So he's very dangerous there. And Khabib is going to have some trouble on the feet. I think that Michael Johnson will dominate the striking exchanges. However, the big X factor here is Khabib Nurmagomedov's Sambo. He's just Russian wrestling, for who doesn't know. He's such a monster with that. He's taken some of the best fighters in the world, just flipped them over their heads, slammed them constantly, done whatever he wants to do to them. And that's a big danger for Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson has some very good takedown defense, but I don't think it's going to be enough to stop, or at least not consistently stop Khabib. I think that when he's fresh, he'll probably do a pretty decent job at making sure that Khabib can't get any big slams, but I think he will end up on his back at least a couple times early on. But I think that if Michael Johnson isn't able to really tag up Khabib early on and get him tired and get him second-guessing his takedowns, then I think Khabib will dominate the fight. I am going to actually go with a Khabib Nurmagomedov win. However, I wouldn't be surprised to see Michael Johnson win. I just think that the gap between Khabib's grappling and between his grappling and Michael Johnson's grappling compared to Michael Johnson's hands compared to Khabib's hands is probably just a little bit more devastating, because we know Khabib can hold his own. He's a tough guy. He's Russian. He's Dagestani, whatever he is. Those guys are always tough to beat, the finish at least. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think that Khabib's just going to be too tough. He's going to eke out a third round decision. Well, obviously a third round decision. I mean, it's not a main event, so yeah, you know what I mean. It's going to be a decision. Next up, we have the main event of the prelims, which is another badass fight. We got Frankie, the Answer Edgar, taking on Jeremy, Lil, Heath, and Stevens. Now, this is one of those badass fights that as soon as you see it made, as soon as you see the official announcement, you're like, holy shit. What we have here is Frankie Edgar, who brings heart, chin, skill, against Jeremy Stevens, who brings speed, he brings explosiveness. He's just an absolute monster. What we do have to put in the question here is which guy is going to basically be able to dominate the feet exchanges, because I think that when it comes to wrestling, I think that it's going to be hard to get Jeremy Stevens down, and it's going to be almost impossible to get Frankie Edgar to the ground. Why? Well, just because, Frankie Edgar, what he likes to do is he likes to mix in his strikes and his takedowns, and I think that Jeremy Stevens is going to be expecting Frankie Edgar to try to shoot on him just because of how dangerous he is on the feet. Jeremy Stevens has some of the most heavy-hitting hands, and he has some flying knees in his arsenal, too. We saw him finish, I think it was Dennis Bermudez with a great flying knee right at the end of the fight. It was beautiful. So there's just a lot of danger in standing up with Jeremy Stevens, so Frankie Edgar might prefer to keep it on the ground, or at least attempt to maybe mix in the jabs, try to keep the fight at his range, which is more, a close range type of jabbing type of affair where he's constantly moving out of the way and stuff like that. He's going to be hoping that Jeremy Stevens will be trying to hit pot shots, because if he does that, then I think that Frankie will dominate the fight. He'll just move around Jeremy and can make him miss. We all know that Frankie Edgar gets hit, but, Jesus Christ, you can't finish the guy. So I think Frankie Edgar is going to eke out the decision, but it's going to be one hell of a fight, and let me tell you, you do not want to miss the prelims for this card. These are going to be fucking sick, in particular the last two fights, but I wouldn't miss any of them if I were you. So that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, as always, please hit the like button and please subscribe to the channel. Make sure you check out the other video, which is going to be the UFC 205 main card predictions and preview. That will probably be out very, very shortly. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. And as always, let me know in the comments section down below who you think is going to win these fights. And I will see you in the next video.